Are mission statements, vision statements, and values all they're cracked up to be? Maybe not. Hello, I'm Michael Denisoff. I've dedicated my entire professional career to helping organizations perform great and have wonderful and healthy cultures. I started this new podcast called Work Trauma, exposing how corporations really work for you to make decisions about your career and what companies you want to work for. On today's podcast, we're going to talk about what I like to call the fallacy, or sometimes fallacy, of mission, visions, and values. Why is this important to you? Well, it's important to you because you want to make sure if you're looking to work at a company, or even the company you're already in, are they the real true mission, vision, and values of that company? And is that a place you want to work? So let's talk about this. Now, mission, vision, and values. This is a tough episode for me because I really like mission, vision, and values. I've done a lot of work. I've helped tens, maybe hundreds of companies with their mission statements, right? So it's really good work. I personally benefited from my own personal mission statement. So the fact that I'm calling them into question is kind of upsetting to me, but it's very true. So let's talk about why this is a problem in companies. So the first thing I would tell you is so many mission statements are built for external consumption, if you will. That means they're written for the outside public to look good. When the purpose of a mission statement, a true mission statement, is to shape the organization or shape the person, to make sure it comes in as a guide and helps in decision making. But the reality is most mission statements have been crafted and overly refined to the point where they're pretty much sterile. For example, I was working with a global design architect firm. They designed 5-star hotels across the globe. And I was working on their new mission statement because they're artists. They wanted to be inspired. So he came up with this leadership team of this new mission statement, and it was raw and it was staccato, but they felt it here, right? And it just so happened that day the head of marketing was out of the room, which, by the way, was a good thing because 3 weeks later we come back, and as we start to kind of revisit the mission statement and the vision and the values and what we want to do with them, the marketing person said, or the head of marketing said, I've taken it upon myself to, refine and clean up and wordsmith, if you will, the mission statement. And what he did to it, he castrated it. It was terrible. Although it looked fancy and the outside world would have liked it, it really didn't mean anything, and it wasn't going to shape the company. So that's one of the reasons why a lot of times mission, vision, and values fail in companies. Related to that, of course, is this idea of an outside agency. I mean, companies spend so much money on outside agencies to help them craft their mission, vision, and values, when the people on the outside have no idea what's most important, what's really driving the people on the inside. And so it doesn't mean anything. It becomes a fancy sign on the wall, maybe with fancy lights on it, but it doesn't really mean anything to anybody because the people who are living it didn't craft it. And it's a big waste of money that could be spent maybe on employee benefits or employee development. So that's a big problem. Other problem, I don't know, I've done a lot of mission statement work with people, with some organizations, and it becomes a semantical thing. They get hung up on words. When I say it's really about the test of a mission statement is how does it really shape the company? But it will have 2-hour-long conversations about semantics. One time I was with this group and they had like a 3-hour conversation about, should we use the word gestalt? A ridiculous conversation that really didn't add value, not only to the process of writing the mission, vision, and values, but to the company at all. Okay. So that's some of the reason why some of the mission statements don't work, okay? One of the other big problems is they're only shared once or maybe once a year. There'll be like this big kickoff, and we have a new mission statement, and we'll have a band, and we'll hand out free T-shirts. And, it'll be like $1.2 million on the kickoff with the new mission statement. And that's the last time you ever hear about it. And 6 months later, nobody remembers the mission statement. Nobody even likes that T-shirt with their company logo on it. And you're begging for $30,000 for something that would be valuable, but you just wasted $1.2 million on this big kickoff that did nothing for the company. So because you only hear it once, right? You have to hear it over and over and over for sure. Also, this idea, there's this interesting thing that a lot of executives and CEOs tell themselves and fool themselves with saying, our employees know the mission statement. They don't. I'm telling you, anytime a company says, our CEO says, our people love our mission statement, I go around and I talk to people and I say, by the way, what's your company's mission statement? And they're like, I don't know. Really? Because your CEO said everybody knows it. A lot of times they don't, or if they do from memory, they're straggling for it. It's not moving them. It's not inspiring them. Just recently, I was working with a pretty large company in the Midwest, and the CEO was pretty out of touch and kept on saying, we have a company placemat. And on that placemat, we have our mission, our vision, our values, and we have our strategy for the year, because it should be on one page, which, by the way, I believe to be true. And everybody knows this, and everybody likes it, because there was a mnemonic, there was a 3-letter acronym. It was great. So what did I do? I started just talking to people. I would call on that line, and when I was there, ask people, do you know the mission statement? Do you know the vision, values? And they just didn't, right? So a lot of times CEOs will fool themselves that they know it. All right, other things we need to talk about. Let's talk about values. Values are pretty interesting. Biggest problem with a company's values, right, their stated values, is that they're not accurate, or they're cliche. Like, our value is integrity. Well, we would hope so, but what does that mean? And a lot of times it's not true, because I've seen what happens at the top in executive teams. There's not a lot of integrity a lot of the time. Or they'll have things like teamwork, right? Or the worst one that hurts me the most is be entrepreneurial, right? Be entrepreneurial. I've seen so many people, including myself in organizations, be proactive, take initiative, and get kicked in the gut for it. Because a lot of companies really don't want you to be entrepreneurial. They want you to stay in line and just kind of do what you're told. And I have tons of stories about that. One time, I just had the big talk from the CEO of a small company, and he said, everybody should be the leader. Everybody should be proactive. Proactive is one of our core values. Well, he was late for a meeting, so we decided to start the meeting without him. And then we got yelled for starting the meeting without him and being proactive. So make sure your values align, because we know in organizations, there's stated values and there's actual values, and employees figure them out very quickly. All right, a couple other things. The other thing with values is kind of funny. You have these values, and we're going to focus on this and that. And then like, well, what about good communication? And then what about good listening? And all of a sudden, we should have about 4 or 5 to talk about. People want 128. They want the Lominger, 5. Well, aren't this important? They're all important. But the question is, what 4 or 5 are going to really focus on? A lot of times you'll have these ridiculous discussions about what should be there. So in the end, I think when it comes to the values of a company and the mission too, just be honest about it. Hey, our mission is to make money, right? Which is true, through selling X, Y, and Z. Our mission is to make stakeholders more profitable, for the CEO to get his bonus or her bonus. That's really what it is. It's really kind of crazy, and it kind of bothers me that companies wouldn't just tell the truth, because in time people figure it out. And even if they stay there, their cynicism just goes up, right? Just kind of tell the truth. I think about, I know this is going to be heresy for a lot of people, but when Jack Welch talks about his book about GE, what he did at GE, we know what he did at GE. He kind of ruled or led through fear. There's legends of him, kicking people in the shins. He scared people. They did top grading, which they would lay off the bottom 10% every year. I would have liked to have known the true story of what happened there. Would it be something I would personally do? Maybe that the company needed it at the time. I don't know. But instead we got, he touched the hearts, his writer. He touched the hearts of people. He grabbed into, he empowered them and all this stuff. That was just kind of pablum. Even though it's true, I think there's truth to those words and truth to those concepts, but he didn't do that. I would have liked to known the truth. In fact, I was just talking to producer Rob about this. We have a company right here. I'm in Cincinnati right now, and there's a logistical company, and I like them. And they're not for everybody. I'm not even sure I would work there, but their values are very clear, which is work hard, play hard. And they work their people to the bone, and they really rock them. But they also party really hard and take really good care of them. Now, is that a place that I would have gone to go work for? Probably not. It's not for me, but I love that they're clear on who they are, what their mission is, and how they're going to operate, and it attracts to people who do the same. So that's really the problem with the mission and visions, ultimately, is that most companies don't live up to what they state. And that's where you get problems, right? So let's talk about the solutions here. Let me find my solutions page. I know I have it. You already kind of heard it already. The biggest thing is when you have a mission statement or a vision statement and your values usually grouped together, but by just having those, you're setting expectations with your employees or with possible employees who are checking you out. So what's going to happen if you're saying, hey, we want employees, that really are bold or entrepreneurial or proactive? That's who you're going to attract. But if you really don't want them, it's going to cause a lot of problems in the organization. So just be clear on what you really, really want in terms of the values, and make sure those values speak to your people. So don't just say, we want good customer service. How do you talk about customer service in the organization? Do you say, we want to just kick ass customer service? Then make that your value. Who cares if the outside world sees it? It's not for the outside world. It's how you're going to conduct your mores and your norms within the organization. So just be really, really honest about that. Again, your mission statement, keep it raw, keep it staccato, right? Keep it so it moves you. Years ago, when I wrote my first mission statement, I wrote it. It was beautiful. It had prose. It had melody to it. And I wrote it pretty much for everybody else so they think I was a good person. It did nothing to shape me. Then I was challenged to write one that I still have to this day. It's been modified, evolved a little bit, but it's very staccato. It's very in your face because that's what helps shape me. So do the same thing for your company. Just make sure it's who you are, okay? Also, I've been moving away personally from mission statements for companies to more rally cries because people remember a rally cry. It sounds better, right? So this goes years ago. I lived on an Indian reservation. I used to have this long prayer to help me run fast. And it was this long thing was, Tatakin Heyanki Yejicha Wachinolo, which literally, dear God, help me to run like the wind. And my Indian mentor said to me, too long. Say Tate Asi, which literally translates to like the wind. And he said, shortness has power in it. And so I really encourage companies these days to do something short and memorable. That's kind of the rallying cry for people. But in the end, if you have a mission, you have the vision and the values, you have to integrate it as a leader into everything you do. So that means you talk about it a lot, right? You have to share it a lot. How do we know that Coca-Cola is the real thing? It's because they told us 170 million times. That's how we know. Same thing with the mission statement, the values. You have to talk about that. They have to be integrated into decision making. You don't have values there just hanging on the wall. It integrates into your decision making. And sometimes that decision may be, hey, we're going to make a little less this quarter because we're going to stick to our values. In a long time, it will pay off for us. A lot of companies don't do that. A lot of people watch for that. Make sure it's integrated in your talent system. So your performance management, how you hire, do you hire to your mission, vision, and values? Do you fire to them, right? Do you promote to them, right? Because if you don't promote to them, people figure out, hit promoted. Hey, I don't get promoted by following and doing a great word and following the mission statement. I get promoted by, buddying with the boss. People figure that out. Even your dimmest employee will figure that out really quick. So it's all about integrity to those mission, vision, and values. They have to be meaningful. They have to make a lot of sense. And if they don't, it just becomes window dressing at companies, right? And they're just not very, very inspirational. They mean very little. And in the end, it actually detracts because people get cynical about it and disappointed in it. Because I came here to work for this mission, and I'm really actually working for this mission. So that's my take on mission, vision, and values. Why you should be really, really questionable to them because they got to be real and they got to be lived, not perfect, but lived every day. And if you're going to look for a company, you got to make sure their mission, vision is true. That's what they live by. And then you have to decide, hey, is that something I want to be a part of? So that's my take on mission, vision, and values. I'd love to hear your take if you agree or if you disagree or if you have a funny story. A lot of people have funny stories about their missions, I'd love to hear about it. And we'll continue our next episode on work trauma, which we all have, work trauma, exposing how business really works.